One of the most important facets of any business is customer service. In business, you are not only selling a product or a service, but an experience. Providing exceptional customer service and developing real relationships with your clients means increased sales, retain customers, new customers via word of mouth, and a positive reputation. You're listening to the Focus on Customer Experience podcast. Benjamin Del Grosso gives you the ins and outs of one of the most underlooked aspects in business today. Improve your customer service and watch your business skyrocket. 2, 1. Now, here's your host, Benjamin Del Grosso.
Hi, and welcome to the show. I'm Benjamin Del Grosso, and you're here to see Focus on Customer Experience. Today, we have a special guest. He's professional in public speaking and a communication coach. He recently won his trademark for Master Talk in the USA. This is Brenden. Brenden, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely, Benjamin. Thanks for having me, man. So yeah, exactly. And thanks so much for the words of congratulations. So yeah, founder of Master Talk, I started a YouTube channel in my basement a few years ago on how to communicate ideas effectively. And it turned later on into an executive coaching business for entrepreneurs, for coaches, and primarily corporate employees. But the way that I got started was when I was in university. I used to do these things called case competitions. Think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So while other guys my age were playing rugby or soccer or some other thing, as you can tell, not really ill-equipped to do, I did presentations competitively. And that's how I learned how to speak. And then as I got better at speaking, I realized people younger than me weren't great at communication. And we didn't have money for a communication coach either. So I just started helping them. I wasn't that great, to be honest. And that was how I developed the skill set after years of practice and what led to the idea for the YouTube channel.
That's awesome because, you know, when I started my YouTube channel, it's only been 5 months, I think now, that I've actually been actively putting videos on it. I had so many people telling me, you know, it's kind of a rough video, you know, could be better. But I was like, you know what? You know, it's better to be done than not do it at all. And what happened is I just keep getting better. And now that I'm doing the podcast, I got like someone like you on the show, we're talking about communication. And all I keep doing is getting better. Like if I go to my early podcast episodes, it's like, you know, and now I'm getting rid of a lot of that, getting more polished, and it's all about practicing and then building up your confidence. And I'm sure you can easily give us some good pointers. I mean, I was reading some pretty cool stuff on your Facebook profile.
Yeah, absolutely, Benjamin. I mean, to your point, you know, the first year that I was on YouTube, it was a complete write-off because I was just practicing in my basement. I didn't edit a single video and it was terrible, right? All my videos are still up there, but we progressed over time. And I think what you did really well, which is really the only lining thread between the successful people versus the people who don't get there, is the consistency. They just keep doing it. They keep getting better. And over time, they build that skill set. So obviously today, Master Talk's a lot more than just me in a basement. Now you have a production team. Now things are a lot more professional, but it definitely doesn't start that way. So it's important never to compare someone's chapter 23 with somebody else's chapter 1. I got that from a guy named Ryan on YouTube. He's done really well for himself, but I think that's the key. And then there's so many tips about confidence I'm happy to talk about as well.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah, let's hear about it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So there's a couple of things. So I would say the first one, let me give you kind of the 3 easiest tips. The first one is called the random word exercise. So all you have to do is you pick a random word, like shelf, like bookshelf, library, mouse, and you give presentations out of thin air. And what this does is it improves your resiliency as a speaker. So if you could do random words like avocado toast, like headphones, what happens is your presentations that are well prepared, that you actually have time to do in your own industry, become a lot easier for you to deliver. And the other piece with the random word exercise is that it helps build momentum over time. It's really easy to get clear areas of improvement. So when you do the exercise the first time, it sounds something like this. Avocado is, but then after you do it 25 times, which takes like a day or something, or probably a lot less, you're a lot better at this, and you go, wow, I'm actually really good at the speaking thing, and that's how momentum builds over time.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that'd be like me taking this coffee cup and just doing a whole, this coffee cup it's a coffee cup and it'll hold coffee, right? And then next thing you know, you build on it. It is like, this coffee cup was made in China. It was made in a special factory in the middle of nowhere. It was specially made. I got it at the New York Starbucks store in New York City. And then you start getting a little bit more confident of what to say. So that's like a random word exercise. And you said shelf. So that's like trying to sell someone a shelf, like you work at IKEA or something like that. Some assembly required.
You know what I love about what you did there, Benjamin, is you didn't just talk about, you also demonstrated it in real time, which I thought was super cool. But
Well,
yeah,
that's really what you're doing, right? It's awesome. I mean, so you're coaching people to build confidence, and this ties into our customer experience, because how you communicate with your staff will directly reflect on the results within your work environment. And I was reading something on your profile. You were talking about how to communicate with Elon Musk is different than how you would communicate with a 7-year-old girl, I think is what you actually had written on LinkedIn. So
yeah, absolutely. And the point that you're driving, especially when it comes to customer experience, is I think what a lot of people miss, whether they're business owners or executives, is customer experience is about realizing that your number one customer is the people that work for you. So how are you motivating them to succeed at work? How are you developing them? How are you showing that leadership and showcasing this idea that you're the best boss they ever worked with? Because when you develop the employee experience side of any business or any company, the customer experience fixes itself on their own, because happy employees will help happy customers. Even if the customers aren't happy, they'll make them happy. So I think that's the key focus of how we should be thinking about this. And then the way I see it with customer experience as well, and how we communicate ideas, going back to the 7-year-old girl and Elon, is I like to think of feedback, which is a vital piece of how we drive results forward, as a thermometer, right? You know, those little thermometers we used to kind of check the temperature.
yeah.
And the idea with a thermometer, Benjamin, is by realizing that, hey, wait a second, you can't be as intense with your feedback with Elon as you are with the 7-year-old girl. Because with the 7-year-old girl, you can't be super intense with that person. You have to kind of encourage them, be really positive, because they're 7. But when you're Elon, well, Elon doesn't care. He just wants the objective truth, and he just wants to keep moving forward. But you need to be, as a leader, you need to be proficient in both. Because if you can't filter your feedback for the employees who are getting started in your company, they'll be super discouraged. They'll be like, oh my God, Brenden just gave me like 15 points to improve. I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can do this job. I should probably quit. And then the other side is your top executive is going, why is Brenden giving me a bunch of fluff? Like, let's go. Like, give me like the points of, why am I working for this guy? You have to be able to filter and unfilter the feedback for different types of stakeholders and people, not just for employees, but also for different customers and stakeholders in the business.
Oh yeah, this is very important too. You really need to be able to read your employees, because so I used to be a general manager of a store. We'd have about anywhere between 5 and 8 technicians depending on the time of year. And when you go to those technicians, some of them you had to tell them, "Good job, you did awesome yesterday. You did great." Another one you had to tell them like, "Man, why are you so slow? Like seriously, I expect you to get done in this time." And some of those people, they're all motivated differently. So you have to know how to talk to them. If you tell every single one of them they did an amazing job, they kind of, right? Because there's some people that need to have that kick in the butt. You know, they normally get a job done in, let's call it 3 hours, but really what it is they took 5. Well, something was off. So you need to find out what's off. Maybe something was going on in their personal life. Maybe something was going on where just they didn't get any good sleep, or they didn't have their morning coffee yet. You know, some people get really grouchy when they don't have their morning coffee, right? So, you know, all these different things happen. And I've had the experience, especially managing technicians. Technicians have very big egos, and sometimes you have to find a way to talk to them, right? So yeah, it's very interesting, because we're talking, I just want to kind of, you're talking about the 7-year-old girl, and I just want to talk, like I have a 4-year-old daughter, and I know early on she'd scream. She'd get really mad. She'd scream because she's trying to communicate, but she's not at that age of communicating yet. And then I get frustrated and I scream back, right? Because I'm a father and I don't know what I'm supposed to do other than scream back because she's screaming at me. And then, what ends up developing as a result of that is now she thinks I'm going to scream at her every time, right? So now as a father, I've had to progress that relationship of going, okay, screaming at her because she's screaming at me doesn't work. Right. And that's just me just showing my own faults as a human being, right? So now, you know, over the years, right? She's, she communicates better now and everything like that. I'm talking about like when she was 2 years old. And now, occasionally she's thinking, is he going to yell? And it's like, well, no, because there's no point in yelling anymore, right? Like but I'm calm, right? But the problem is because of those earlier experiences, sometimes she's that. And it's the same thing with employees. If you're always yelling at them and you all of a sudden don't yell at them, they're thinking, something going on with this guy today. You have any thoughts on where I'm going with this, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely, brother. Like I think the example with your daughter is a great one because it demonstrates the idea of how you change your approach versus the daughter and the technician. And it's those differences that create the best leaders. And this is a principle people can write down. It's really the ethos of what I do is if you communicate 20% better than your competition, you will stand out 100% of the time. Right? If you communicate 20% better than your comp, you'll stand out 100% of the time. What does that mean? That means what are the small little things that add up so much over time that creates an unfair advantage to you as either the leader of the business, managing employees, or even with customer experience? What are the 20% things that we can do that are easy that nobody else in the business is thinking about? And then there's two facets to that. The first facet is the employees and the other facet is the customers. So with the employees, one example that I teach clients that people could implement is how do you lead feedback meetings with a technician, with really any other employee? Because most feedback calls, Benjamin, start something like this. Okay, yeah, so I got 15 minutes here. So tell me, what do you think you did well? Okay, and what do you feel you could have done better? Yeah, this is what I think. Do you have any questions for me? Okay, I'm busy. I got to go back to work. That's usually how like 80, 90% of meetings go. And then you have the other 10%, which sounds something more like, Benjamin, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Always great to see you, my friend. Based on our last conversation, I remember you told me that your top 3 goals for the year were A, B, and C. I was wondering how you're progressing on that and if there's anything I could do to support you. So A, I remembered the goals because I wrote them down in the next meeting. B, I called them out myself. And C, the person is looking at you going, okay, like what? Like this, and that's not hard to do. You open a phone, you write the 3 things, and you can forget about the goals literally because you have a lot on your plate. But because you wrote them down somewhere, you can bring them back up. And that little thing alone takes 5 minutes out of your life and creates that 10 out of 10 experience without you losing a lot of money or without you losing a lot of time and resources. And then one thing that we do in the business that I think might be interesting for customers is small things. So what's the small thing that we do? We make a list of all of our existing clients and prospects and past clients, and we send them each 30-second videos saying one thing that we appreciate about them that's very specific and unique to them. There isn't a single service provider in their life, whether they're working with a lawyer, whether they're working with a technician or something, that isn't doing that. But it's those little things that stack up over time, and that's really what creates the exceptional experience, whether it's with employees, your daughter, or customers.
So something I used to do when I worked at Best Buy many years ago, so it's been a few years for me. I used to have a sit down with all the employees about once every 3 to 6 months. And obviously, every meeting changed. But the main first initial meeting I would have with an employee, usually after they've been there about 3 to 6 months, I would have a sit down, let them know these are the expectations of being in the department. I would let them know that right out of the gate. Then I would ask them if they have any short-term or long-term goals. So I would try and find out, what are your short-term goals? So short-term goals might be for some of them, they might be in college and they just want to finish college and they're just there. This is like a night job so that they can pay their bills, eat food, whatever, right? Some of their long-term goals might be, I want to get married. I want to buy a house. I want to buy my first car. You never know what it's going to end up being, right? Then I would ask them, what are 3 things you want to learn while you're working here? Not even related to work. It doesn't have to be related to work. Some of them would be like how to manage money, and I would show them how to manage the numbers of the department. But these were all things to find out how to motivate those employees, because some of these people were part-time. Some of them work 10 hours a week, right? They have 2 5-hour shifts at a Best Buy. So you have to find a way to motivate these people and to educate them. And I always felt that if you're educating, they're going to have motivation to work hard for you because you have their best interest at mind. So I had that. I'd also ask them if there's one thing they would do different than what we're doing now, because I always feel that you're learning from your employees, right? And then I'd see if they have any feedback for me. Most people wouldn't say anything, and I think that may be just because it was confrontational. But I was, always try to have an open door policy, let people tell me, I've had people say stuff to me, and I'm like, you really have to take it on the chin. And sometimes you go, you know what? They're right. I need to change. Didn't really think about that. And as a manager over the years, you have to learn from your mistakes. And a lot of that is communication. Like, I've said some stuff that I feel is really mean to people. And, the main question is, do you learn from it? Do you learn from that not to communicate that way, not to say those things? For instance, like I said to my wife once, nonchalantly, I said, I'm really disappointed in you. And I didn't really think it was a big deal at the time. I thought I was just saying, like, I was disappointed about what happened, right? And then it was like, that was just like such a trigger word for her, where I was like, oh my God, are we getting divorced? I'm like, holy crap, I shouldn't have said that. And then I had to like retract the whole statement. We had to have a conversation about it. I didn't realize, what, I wasn't good, obviously, with the definition at that time, that young time in my marriage, right? now we're 17 years strong, but I was probably within the first 5 years or something of the marriage when I said that. But the question, I've learned from that. I've learned that word has a different meaning than what I meant. So, but we're talking about communication here, right? So, I'm showing some vulnerability here. So, Brenden, here, keep going here. You got some great content.
Oh, thanks, Benjamin. No, I can relate, man. I could come here, act like an angel, but I've definitely screwed up a bunch of times in my life as well. And that's what I tell people. The reason I'm proficient in communication is not because I studied it in school. It's because I made every mistake in the book. Why am I able to give you the framework on feedback? And by the way, I loved a lot of your questions. I'm actually gonna take and put into my pocket. I love the one that you said, what are the 3 things that you're looking to learn in this job that you want to learn? I thought that was excellent. Never thought of that. So I'm definitely going to take that. And that's the key, right? Is I screwed up my feedback calls when I was younger. I just screwed up younger. So I just did it when I was 18 or 19. So now I can coach in a proficient way. So yeah, every insight I share always comes from a mistake on my side. So definitely open to that as well. And then the other piece that I'd love to build on the idea of customer experience is really emphasizing the point, Benjamin, that it doesn't take, and you said it a lot, I just want to make it clear for the group what you're saying, is you don't actually need to do much to go far. Right? A lot of people think about going the extra mile for everyone. Go the extra mile, go the extra mile. Most people can't even go the extra meter. Okay, just go the extra meter. Like, am I asking you to buy a Lamborghini for every single one of your employees? And no, like, that's not it at all. Like, I'll give you another quick example, back to the video thing. So one guy who's that I'm helping, he's like the CEO of this interior design company, really shy, introverted guy. He's got like 35 employees. And I just told him, I said, let's call him John. I said, John, send 35 videos, like 1 to each of your employees. And then his immediate reaction is, oh, but what do they think about me? I just got started. I don't know. Is this going to work? I'm worried. I go, stop. You don't get rewarded on how well you do it. You get rewarded on just doing it, on how many times you do. So he sat down for an hour, 30-second videos each of their employees, wishing them like a happy holidays. This is not rocket science. Okay, let's do the tally on this. It probably takes 20 minutes for him to do. But after he spent that 20, maybe 30 minutes doing that, next week he opened his phone. He had a bunch of messages from every single one of his employees. Some of them were crying, like tears of joy, obviously. Like other people were like, oh my God, I've worked at like 7 other companies. It's never happened before. And he got bought in. And how much money did it cost him? Nothing. Okay.
Oh yeah,
Nothing.
no. So this is funny. So I do personalized video thank yous to all my clients. So every single one of my clients gets a personalized video thank you. And this guy messages me yesterday. So my partner, while I was listening to your video message from email, says you should consider doing voiceover work for ads or channels because you have a good voice.
I agree, by the way, you do.
And I said, you know what? I owe it all to the new microphone. I said, I don't think it's me, but I think it's the new microphone. but that's hilarious. That's what I got for feedback from me communicating, just saying, thank you for supporting my small business, right? So, but that was pretty cool because I tell people, hey, if you have any feedback for me, let me know. And that was the feedback. You should do voiceovers for ads. But yeah, no, yeah, you got lots of really cool things that you've grown into over the last obviously 3 years. And I've had lots of people on here, and you were talking about how you made mistakes early, and that's how you've gotten to where you are. So I had a coach on here who does mindset and all that, and works directly with leaders and CEOs. And he talked about how he's been an alcoholic, he's been a drug addict, he's literally done all that stuff. So you can throw whatever you want at me. I know it all. He goes, so most people can sit here and do the poor me, and talk about how, I was a druggie and I was an alcoholic and I was that. But what he says is what he strictly does is he goes, but I took that and said, I know I can spot an alcoholic, I can spot a drug addict, I can spot all that. And because of that, I can coach a lot of these upper level people because I took that experience and reapplied it, right? Instead of just saying, hey, I am and do the poor me, and people should work, feel sorry for me. He repurposed that, right? Just like you're saying, you had something happen to you early on. And because you had these things happen early on, you learned from it very quickly and pivoted and said, hey, I can learn from this. And I can now teach people based on my experience on how to continually improve.
Absolutely, man. And that's a great story from the mindset coach. I love that point around. Like he gave himself or herself, right? They had a bunch of, go ahead.
No, I'm not saying anything. No.
Oh, I thought you were saying something. And yeah, exactly. And they had all those problems, so now they know how to fix them. Definitely was my case as well with communication, but also with any skill, is when you're looking to learn, specifically to the topic we have today. If you're looking to use communication to improve the employee or the customer experience with the people around you, don't worry too much about comparing yourself to people who've already accomplished that goal, but rather ask yourself a more important question, which is, what is the small action I can take from this episode and apply it right away? Oh, maybe I should send one video. That's good. Okay, I might be scared. It doesn't really matter what the result is. Let me just throw that up. And another example I can give as well of another exercise I can share on communication that's helped me a lot is called question drills. So question drills is simply an opportunity for you to guess every possible question that your customer can potentially ask you about your product, or that your employee can potentially ask you about your business. So I'll give you an example. When I started my coaching business, I was still fairly young when I started coaching executives, probably like 22, 23 years old at the time. So when I started to make sure that I was bulletproof, I literally had a room of people who were not nice people. They're all my best friends, but they weren't really nice people. Hence, I guess why they're my best friends. And they started asking me every brutal question that I didn't know the answer to in communication. They were like, okay, where does the fear of communication come from? What's the easiest way to improve camera presentation? They just grilled me on every possible question. And every time I didn't know the answer, we just write down the question, and we'd figure out the answer together. So after many hours, honestly, it took years, but in that small session that we had, I was a lot more proficient. And that was also true when I started selling product a few years after, especially coaching packages. Let's say somebody gets on a call with me and they ask me a question, I don't know the answer. I look really stupid because I'm the person who's supposed to be selling them the idea of working. And this is true with any other industry. But that's also true from an employee experience perspective. If somebody comes up to you and says, hey, what's your vision for this business? And you don't have a good, compelling answer, your top employee is going to be like, okay, well, why am I still working here? So you need to always ask yourself and preemptively guess. You can do this with people that you trust. What are some of the questions that your employees will ask you about your business? What are some of the questions that your customers will ask you about your service or product or prospects? And what are some of the questions that you'll get asked on your own thought leadership, on your own expertise by other podcasters, media outlets, people like that? But when you start just to practice 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day of going, what are the 5 questions I could potentially get asked on? You just do that little by little, chunk by chunk every single day. Eventually you'll become bulletproof.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's true. Like, exactly what you're saying. And I had this thought of something I was just going to add to it. And then, unfortunately the communication wore off, but you had a really good point. It triggered something there. And I don't remember what, but
and while you're thinking about that, I guess I can jump in with something else.
Sure, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. The question drill is also super helpful with client objections. So let's say somebody's trying to object to something that you're doing, whether it's in your business, whether it's in the service that you're providing, whether it's in the employees that you're managing. Because you preemptively guessed all of those objections ahead of time, you're able to react more calmly. This is an advanced topic I teach clients called communication agility. So communication agility is the idea that you're quickly able to reset your emotions. So let's say somebody asks you, like throws out a question like, oh, well, why is the product, I don't know, $300? I saw something else yesterday that it was $200. Someone else, why are you charging $300? So most people, if they didn't prepare for that type of question, they might react, even if they have the right answer, they might react emotionally to it. They'll be like, well, it's $300 because of this and this, and I have 20 years of experience. Versus if they had practiced it beforehand, they can go something like, hey, I really appreciate the question. Thanks so much for your interest. And yes, completely understand the perspective about how the other service charges a little bit less than we do. But the reason there's a price difference there is because of X, Y, and Z. These are the 3 types of add-ons that we provide. That's why we charge a premium for what we do. Any other questions or concerns I can help you with today? So notice how because we practiced beforehand, boom, you're able not just to answer the question, give the right answer, but also answer with the right vocal tonality and intonation in your voice, where people go, oh, wow, I really trust this person. I should probably pay the extra $100 for this, I don't know, bakery service or whatever. It's an expensive bakery, but you get what I mean.
So what I was going to say earlier was I was going to talk about vision. So a lot of companies have a vision, like I have a vision statement as well. But what happens is you communicate your vision to your employees. And if they don't see that you're actually taking action on that vision, a lot of them don't stick around because you're communicating that this vision is going to happen. So I'm part of a networking group. And the one guy says he's telling everybody, I'm going to get into apparel. I'm going to get into apparel. And then, people start going, yeah, are you ever actually getting into apparel? And then he goes, fine. You know what? Boom, buys a whole building, right? we're getting into apparel. We're going to figure it out, right? But that's the thing is people don't believe you until you take action. So the thing is, like, I have a vision. This is my vision. This is how it's going to get there. And it's like such a big vision. But you have to figure out how your employees are going to fit into that vision. And if you communicate it wrong and you tell them, you know what, Brenden, I've hired you, you're coming on to Safe Drive Solutions and you're going to be my next executive. And that'll be in about 2 years. And 3 years down the road, you haven't even opened up another location. You haven't even expanded. You're still doing the same amount of business, but, and then, now you're going, well, he said within 2 years I was going to be an executive, and it's been 3 years, and I haven't even expanded locations. You're probably looking for a job at year 2, right? And by year 3, you're gone, right?
100%.
Right? Because that's what happens is you have this vision, you say you're going to do something, and if people don't see you're taking action on your vision, that's a huge flaw in your communication because you haven't told them. You told them this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take action on it. Now I get it. Maybe. Like I'm reading Chris Warren's book right now. He talks about the 99 to 1. Maybe the 1% that you can't control, like COVID hits and your business gets forced to get closed down for 2 years or whatever, right? So now you're 2 years behind on your vision. your employees will understand that you're 2 years behind due to things completely out of your control. But if it's part of the everyday 99% where you're just using excuses, you're just saying, oh, we don't have enough cash flow. Oh, we don't have enough this. Oh, we can't find good employees to expand. Guess what? Build those employees, right? Stop using excuses, because that's why good employees will quit, because you're not communicating properly, right? If you bring them into your vision, and if you even leave yourself vulnerable and say, hey, what do you think we need to do to get to the vision? Because a lot of times your employees have a completely outside looking in, right? Like I always say, I can go into other people's businesses and I can dissect certain things in retail just by looking at it. Look at how they merchandise, look how they do things, look how people are dressed very quickly. Why? Because I have 23 years of retail experience. I've worked big box, I've worked small box, I've worked whatever, all these different things. But that's because I have that experience where I can come in and easily see things. But, similar to, how a kid, you give a kid something, here you go, how do you take this apart or whatever, right? And they dismantle it, and you're like, how the hell did you do that? Because we are so, maybe I'm going to a different tangent here, but we're so ground to these rules, right? So we have these rules that a green light means go and a red light means stop, right? We have all these different rules that we conform ourselves in instead of just being free, right? Similar to kind of tie this into you, similar to public speaking, people think you shouldn't be doing it until you're 100% confident. But how are you going to build that confidence unless you just do it? You need to get up on stage. You need to have those jitters. You need to have those butterflies and start speaking, right? Because once you do, sure, you might fall on your face a few times. Maybe someone will go, you really didn't nail it there. But you go, hey, you know what? But I want to get up and try again. And they go, okay, I respect that. We'll give you another shot. And then you keep getting better. And that's all it is, right? It's, what is it? Failing, I don't know, failing forward, I think is what some people like to say, right? I don't know, take it away there, Brenden. I'm sure you can add to this.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the point around failing forward, Benjamin. And I think the way this applies in both customer experience and communication is with customer experience, it's about not being afraid to try the risque way of adding value to somebody, even if it messes up, provided that the cost of that mess up is minimal. So I'll give you an example, right? The CEO of Zappos at the time when he was alive, Tony Hsieh, he had this rule in his call center that I'm sure you're very familiar with, which was you could stay on as long as you want with the customer on the call. There's no incentive to just hang up on those people and try and answer any of the requests. So one of the stories that I'm sure that's been told multiple times in this podcast that's worth restating is one girl who bought Zappos shoes calls her like them at the middle of the night. She's like drunk. It's like 1 a.m. or something. And she's ordering pizza. She's like, can I get pizza? And then the person on the line is like, this is Zappos. Like, this is for shoes. She goes, yeah, I know, but Zappos is the best customer service, right? So can I get a pizza? And then he just goes, okay, what's your address? And then he calls her a pizza. So this is like a revolutionary story. So many people who heard this story never forget it for the rest of their life. That's the type of customer experience. Was that an opportunity to fail? Absolutely. But was it expensive to make that mistake? If so, a mistake happened? Not really. So as business owners, we always need to be open to new ideas. I'll give you one I got last week that I haven't tried yet, but I'm thinking of. When there's an episode I was listening to with Tim Ferriss, he interviewed a guy named Hugh Jackman, who's on X-Men and a bunch famous actor.
Yeah.
And one thing Hugh does that's super interesting that I never thought of doing is he takes pictures of memorable moments in his life and he sends them off to this company that creates a puzzle out of that picture and sends it back. So what happens is he has like this 500-piece puzzle of that image that means a lot to him. So as he's reconstructing that puzzle, he's actually reminded of all the little details he never saw in that photo before. So he appreciates the moment a lot more and he likes doing puzzles. So when I heard that, I was like, this is so fascinating and bizarre. So in my head, I was thinking, okay, who likes puzzles in my client base? And how can I get a picture of something that means a lot to them and send them a puzzle of that picture so they can recreate that experience in their home? So these are the types of things. So is that going to work? I don't know. Is it worth trying though? Absolutely. Why? Because my client isn't going to be offended if I send them a puzzle and it's only going to cost me like 25 bucks. So those are the types of risks that we need to be open to taking. And the same thing is true with our communication skills. There's probably 90% of people who listen to the random word exercise already forgot it. But then there's 10% of people, maybe even five, who are listening to it and going, this sounds kind of weird. But if Brendan's coached hundreds of people and it's worked every time, I should probably book 5 minutes out of my life every day to try and see what happens. And those are the people are willing to take that extra new idea and run with it, that are the ones who are always going to stay ahead of the curve, not just in their mindset, but definitely in terms of customer experience and one-upping their competition every opportunity they get.
Yeah. So when we were at Best Buy, I used to have to take employees, and obviously at one point in time, I used to be that employee who the supervisor or manager takes you and says, sell me this item. So they would tell you, hey, you need to sell me this item. And you need to say, hey, we had what's called bend questions. So you had to ask them basic, exploring, and narrowing questions, right? But Best Buy taught this, but you were actually graded on what was called CSEs, customer service evaluations. So they'd have this sheet, they'd have certain questions they'd have to ask. So for instance, we actually had, it was when we were training for new store opening. So there's like 150 employees training in this new store in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, right? The regional managers there, they pick random people out of the audience all the time, right, to do the training. And so I got one of the people up there, and I really impressed the regional manager, because what they tried doing was doing the whole, so I just went to, I can't remember, they named like a competitor, right? Like, let's say, I think they said Future Shop or something, even though Best Buy owned Future Shop, they said something like that. And I go, oh, well, I had terrible experience, gave me terrible customer service. And what I could have done was I could have done the whole, oh yeah, those guys suck, right? All I do is hear complaints about them all day, right? And just kept negativity and fed the negativity. Instead, what I did, which really impressed everybody, was, sorry to hear that you had a terrible experience at Future Shop. Now that you're here, let's make it a positive one. And everybody was just like, they like stopped the whole thing. There's 150 employees there, and you do this whole, that's how it's done. And I was like, holy crap. And I can't remember how old I was. I think it was 22 or something at the time. Yeah, it's 22. It was 2002, quite a few years ago now. So, and I remember going, whoa, I did something really good there. But that's the thing, right? I mean, early on in life at that point in time, I would typically trash competitors. You know what I mean? When I worked at like a small independent, yeah, those guys suck. Those guys do terrible work. They're hacks. But the thing is when I'm giving off that negativity to the customer, it's just turning into a negative conversation, because now we're just going to start, it's not a positive one. And so, for instance, I had somebody trying to sell me something recently, I want to say about 6 months ago, and they started slamming one of the competitors, because I think I said, yeah, I had blah, 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 whatever. And they're like, yeah, those guys suck. They do terrible work. They don't even know what they're doing. And I was like, you know what? Now, early on in life, I probably would have said, stop wasting my time, and hung up on them. But I was like, you know what? I just want to see where this goes, because maybe this guy will retract his statement and say I was wrong, I shouldn't have said that, or whatever. He didn't do any of that. 100%. No, he doubled down. He definitely took every single time he could to slam that company. He did. And I knew there was no way I was ever going to do any business with them. And I know that I will never ever refer anybody to this company at all either. Why? Just because of how they conducted themselves. Mm-hmm. And this is why you take care of your employees, and you make sure to train your employees, because if you don't train your employees and you don't audit what they're doing, hence why, like I said, when we were at Best Buy, we did customer service evaluations on how our staff were talking to people. The reason why you had to do that, and I don't know if they still do it today, but I know back in the day when I was there, 02 to 06, they were. So, because you need to make sure what they're saying to customers. And if you're not auditing that, and they're sending out negativity, then your customers aren't going to buy from you, which means you're probably not communicating properly to your employees. Everything is just that whole ripple effect. right? So you have anything to add to that?
Oh yeah, man. Especially what you said there was super powerful, and the phone call was hilarious too. Is the idea of how do we motivate employees and customers as well to not just refer us to more business, but also create that culture of exceptionalism, right? That exceptional experience for everyone. And the point I think is very well missed amongst a lot of business owners, even by me. This is something I need to work on too. I don't do this as consistently as I'd like to, is to remind the people who are bought into your vision why they should stay bought in, right? Remind them consistently. And there's a couple of ways to do this. One piece is co-creating the vision. So most leaders, what they do is they just go, this is the vision, this is where we're going, versus what I feel the smart leaders do, even if externally it seems like their idea, what they do internally is a bit different, which is they go, this is the vision. What does everyone think about this vision? And you get their thoughts and you just listen to them. And you still can move forward with what you have, but just doing that extra audit of just listening to them helps you re-message your vision in a way that buys people in. So I'll give you an example. So initially, when I started, what I was doing with YouTube specifically, the mission, and it still is to this day, is to make every human being a great communicator. That's my goal. That's why I use a lot of my coaching revenue to make my YouTube channel more accessible to people around the world. That's why I do what I do. But it was too centered around me. It was too like, oh, I want to be the greatest communication coach. I want to do this. Whereas now the messaging has changed a lot more to, communication is improving the lives of your families. It's improving access. It's focused on the outcomes that other people desire. And I got that feedback from a lot of my early people. And what I do with my employees, I don't have a lot of employees, probably a team of like 3 to 5 people, is I'm using those people and I'm bringing them onto the coaching calls. I'm helping them see the results. I'm showing them the testimonials, even if they're not directly selling anything yet, because they feel motivated. They're like, holy shit, like I'm actually working for something that's actually doing something important in life. So it's not doing something massive. You don't need to have like a $10 million training program. But I think it's about saying, what is the $10? What is the $100? What is the 10% of my business, the 5% of my business in net profits that I could reinvest into my staff and re-communicating the importance of what we're doing to people on a consistent basis.
Yeah, it's deep. It's interesting. We were just a few weeks ago. I was on a training call, and they were talking about how sometimes on a vision they bring their upper executives in and say, "Hey, what do you think about this vision and where it's going?" And they say, and sometimes your guys will tell you it's stupid, and you have to take it on the chin and go, okay, my vision doesn't make sense. Or if you really believe in that vision and you believe it's achievable, then you have to say, listen, we're going to do this and this is how we're going to do it. And then those executives will go, oh yeah, I agree with you, yeah, it is achievable. He goes, but sometimes it's nice to get that audit from your upper management people or your team. Obviously, I don't have an upper management team at this point in time, but I mean, it's nice to have that feedback, right? See, does it make sense what I'm doing, or am I just being a crazy person? Right. But that's all part about communication, especially if your employees or teammates are part of a lot of those decisions. They feel like they're involved. They feel like they're part of that future. And I know for me, that's always been a big thing. I always want to have some input in what's going on. Whenever I worked for somebody, I really wanted to have that input. What's going on? Why aren't we going this way? Why are we going that way? And I've worked for people who said that's just the way it is. Well, I typically didn't stick around there because they didn't want to communicate with me. Instead of saying, hey, listen, we're going this direction because we have potential contracts to get work in this area. And if we get that work, it's going to turn into millions of dollars. Okay, perfect. Makes sense. You're making an investment in a long-term opportunity instead of just, okay, that makes sense. So that's why you're kind of doing a different division. But that was proper communication of saying, we have this potential to get these contracts to do this kind of work. So that's why we're investing in going this direction with the company. Okay, makes sense, right? Do you have any final words or anything for our guests or people, our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely, Benjamin. Thanks for having me on. A great conversation, man. Lots of great ideas here. I would say that the closing remarks is a book recommendation that nobody recommends because I think it's super underrated. Is a book called Thirst by Scott Harrison. So Scott Harrison's the CEO of Charity Water. It's a nonprofit he started to help people gain access to clean water. But the reason why I recommend it always when I'm on a show is, especially in the context of this topic, customer experience, it's very hard to create customer experiences in the nonprofit world because you don't have that much capital to work with. Your budgets are a lot tighter. You have to be a lot more stringent about how you go about the communication. And it's a lot harder for people to get an extrinsic benefit from giving to charity versus being like, oh, I can buy like a Starbucks coffee for $10 a day. Yeah, sure, I'll do it. I get a coffee every day. Oh, donating $30 to save a life every month. I'll pass, right? So that's the mindset that a lot of people have. So what Scott actually details in the book, which I think is fascinating, is how do you use customer experience and communication and branding as a way to not just accelerate impact, but in a medium that has a lot more restraints than a for-profit entity. That's why I love Thirst by Scott Harrison, because I think it's a detailed report of how you can use communication storytelling to make a massive impact in an industry that's way harder to do a lot of the risks that we talked about in this episode. So yeah, highly recommend that read.
Yeah, this was awesome. I really appreciate you coming on the show here today, Brenden. Spending your time, sharing your wisdom. You know, this really brings, we talk about it on the show quite a bit. We talk about keeping your employees happy. But I mean, maybe people don't think about the whole communication of what's involved with communicating with your employees. If you're not communicating with them effectively, they're going to leave. If you're not communicating with them effectively when they do something wrong, similar to quoting the book, The 1 Minute Manager, reprimand in private, right? And let them know they've done a really good job in front of all the team. So the rest of the team knows they did a great job. Little communication things like that. If you start reprimanding them in front of the team, they might not feel good about themselves. They might not stick around. They might feel you're a bully, right? Everybody reacts to things differently. And I know even over time, I've reprimanded people in front of the rest of the team. And sometimes I've had to do that to let everybody know these are the rules. You know, I've had to do that because someone consistently shows up late and I've let it slide. And I have to let them know, hey, if you show up late tomorrow, you're going to go home. They show up late tomorrow and I got to let them know, just so you know, you're going home. You showed up late. That way I'm reaffirming the rules to the whole team. No, I don't like reprimanding in front of the team, but sometimes you have to do that to reaffirm the rules. And it's also how you do it. If you yell it and scream it and look unprofessional, it may not work out so well for you. And not everybody is going to take what I'm talking about here. Some people are always going to reprimand in private, and it is what it is, but everybody's going to know why that person went home. But the whole thing is show the team that you were doing something about it, because usually other team members are complaining. Why is it that this guy keeps showing up late and he still gets paid to come to work while everybody else has to show up on time? And that's how you end up having a toxic work culture. So you always need to make sure to communicate with your staff. And I think this was really great for us to highlight and have this conversation today, Brenden. And I really appreciate you coming on the show. This was awesome. I think there's going to be a lot of nuggets for people to think about it. Just even the what do you want to call it? The just grab a word, talk about shelf, talk about coffee cup, right? Talk about whatever you want to talk about and communicate that, and get in front of a camera. Just practice it. I mean, don't worry about your Instagram followers or anything. Just take a look at it, critique yourself, and just keep practicing until you build up your confidence.
Absolutely, Ben. Thanks so much for having me on. It was great.
Yeah, this was awesome. So I mean, honestly, I could see myself definitely having you on here again sometime in the future if you're interested, for sure.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Focus on Customer Experience podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. For more information or to connect with Ben, check out Benjamin Del Grosso on LinkedIn, at Safe Drive Solutions on Instagram, or www.safedrivesolutions.ca online. We'll see you next time.